All right, guys, has this ever happened to you? You go to replace or replenish your reservoir, your coolant reservoir, and you end up grabbing the wrong container because they look the same, it's the same color, but you didn't look at the label and you end up pouring motor oil into your coolant reservoir. Now, fortunately, you didn't pour a lot. You caught yourself in time, meaning that you poured maybe just a little bit in. Fortunately, oil doesn't mix with water. Oil is actually less dense than water, which means if oil is submerged in water, it'll flow to the top. So if you already have coolant in your reservoir, the oil should flow to the top. Now you can either drain your coolant system by getting under the car, or you can drain it from the top with a siphon. Now I didn't have a siphon on hand, but I did happen to have an antifreeze checker, which I used in a previous video to show you how to check your antifreeze quality. But it's also a siphon of sorts. So I'm gonna use this to siphon out what I can off the top of whatever coolant I have left in this reservoir. And I may even add some water to the reservoir to bring the levels up as well as the oil. First thing I want to do here though is squeeze the bulb, and this will allow me to suck up the coolant when I let it go after I submerge the tube inside the coolant. Now that's pretty yellow there, if you can see here. So you can't really tell if there's oil or not in there, but it is kind of dark. Now, if you look at this last siphon, the coolant is not as dark as the first one. That's because we're probably getting up the oil that was in there. All right, guys, if you look at the coolant I just siphoned up, you can tell that the oil has risen to the top. And all those bubbles in there, that's oil. But you can see the difference in coloration versus the bottom, right? All right, so the coolant is looking a lot clearer, a lot brighter. That's because most of the oil has been extracted through siphoning. Can you guys tell the difference? Look how clear that is compared to when we first siphoned it out. All right, guys, so we've extracted a good amount of oil, but if you hold the coolant up to the light, you can see the swirls on top of the surface there. So that means there's still some oil in the coolant. But most, if not all of the bubbles are gone, which means most of the oil is out. Once again, not a lot of oil was put in there in the first place. Okay, so I just poured some water in there to bring that oil all the way to the top. All right, guys, you can even tell on the tube here the oil that's still in the system. If I do that, I can feel how slick it is, and you can tell by the bubbles as well, and the white filmy coloration. That's the oil. That's the oil settling on the top. Look at the white film. All right, guys, so we're gonna wipe off the tube and then we're gonna stick it in and compare how oily it is on the next go round. All right, it's not as oily as you can tell, so we're getting somewhere. All right, guys, so I let the car sit overnight, and if we look into the reservoir, we see nothing but a white film on top of the liquid, on top of the antifreeze. That's the oil that's floated to the top, creating that white film on top of the antifreeze. Look at that oil. In any case, guys, if this happens to you, I suggest you take your car to the nearest oil change facility and have them do a coolant system flush. This car can hold about 7 quarts of coolant, and they will flush it about 4 to 5 times and then top it off with some brand new antifreeze. That way you can have peace of mind.